Mix It with Mike plugin of the week comes from Solid State Logic. This is an actual Solid State Logic plugin that is an emulation of two sections of their Fusion hardware mixed bus processor unit, the vintage drive and stereo imager. So I'm going to start by showing you the section or the actual Fusion unit itself. It basically has 5 sections. It has a vintage drive with an input control, has the violet EQ, right? So this is all tonal coloration. This is the basic idea. A high frequency compressor, right, for warming up your audio signal. A stereo image section, which is part of the section that they extracted, and a transformer, which you can insert into the process. So the basic idea of this plugin is something that you would put on the mix bus or may perhaps put as a mastering tool, and you could do subtle tonal coloration and tonal balancing with it. That's the basic idea of it. And in software form, what they've done is they've extracted 2 of the sections, the vintage drive section here. So you have the 3 controls. They added a mix control, so input, output, and the drive and density controls, and a stereo image plugin, which will allow you to do a little bit more than MS type of processing, not a whole lot more. It doesn't get that sophisticated. They're both pretty straightforward kind of plugins, but I'll give it a quick run through and just talk a little bit about what each one does. So we'll start with the vintage drive plugin. Everything starts with an input trim. So this is just calibrating your input level. Now it's interesting because it's hardware, when you drive the input level, you're actually pushing more level into the components. So in some sense, the input trim and the drive control are pretty much the same. They've set you at sort of a medium point here. You notice that things go up to 11 with the drive control, right? This is actually, there's some history behind this. The SSL G series console, the monitor control pot actually went up to 11 and instead of 10 like everybody else's consoles, right? A little tribute there to Spinal Tap. So it has a medium kind of thing for a decent amount of saturation, and you have a density control, and the density, so this is just driving more input gain in for the saturation. That's the basic idea of it. The density control pushes it more towards even harmonics, giving you like a characteristic of, they describe as density, a little bit of warmth, a wet dry control, and the auto gain feature, which should basically be always in. With this in, if you put the input trim, drive, or density control up, your output gain will remain relatively the same. If you do put it in, it might be a good idea if you're driving anything heavy to drag the output trim down so when you take it off, or if you accidentally take it off, you don't blow anything up. The stereo image plugin, similar kind of idea. It has the same input-output trim, so it doesn't, even though it's extracted from the same unit, those things are important. Has a shuffle control, space control, and a width control. The width control is only adding or subtracting information away from the sides in a mid-side configuration. So the width is not taking away center information. It's only adding side level. Important to understand. The space control works with the shuffle, which selects a frequency. Everything below the second frequency, the selected frequency, you can see that they're linked together here, will be increased or decreased, right? So basically it's like a shelf. Everything below there would basically be decreased or increased based on the space control. And this can help to add like some size and some density and stuff into the sound. So it gives you a little bit of control. In the context of the pure Fusion hardware unit, this is actually like a nice feature to throw on top of it, but I'll kind of demonstrate it here a little bit with some drums. So let's start by driving something here. I got the auto gain on, so if I have, say, a drum, let's just bypass this so there's nothing else going on. Right, so we've got the basics there. So now if I drive it here, let's just get a little dirt here. Oh, I guess there's still a connection here, so I'll leave that at 0. And then you could add the density, you know, take the density control and kind of dial this in just to allow a little bit of warmth. Right, so this is obviously the extreme settings here. So if I take it and I dial in something a little bit more reasonable. Sorry, through that section, the toms aren't in there. But okay, so just give you a basic idea of the, you know, the simple sonic characteristic. Again, you could really drive it, you know, make it more aggressive, but these are just the two basic controls. It's a very simple kind of thing. There's nothing complicated. There's no other tonal shaping characteristics. It's just a pretty straightforward, give you some drivers. Again, it's part of a larger unit initially, right? So, and that's the essence of it. Now, depending upon what you put it on, you could use it in a more subtle way to just kind of warm up a mix, something like that. And so just playing around with those simple things, you know, not a lot of bells and whistles, pretty straightforward. There's also a thing here with the color telling you how much of this LED, telling you how much you're overdriving. So if it's green, it's more subtle. Yellow to orange, it starts to get more aggressive. Red, you know, then it starts to get very distorted. And you see, you know, some representation of that here also with the meter. Now, with the stereo imaging plugin, what they're doing here, and I want to kind of put this in context here, because most of the drums here are pretty much mono aside from the overheads, but notice how we can add a bit of size and space here. And the cool part about this with the space control is I can actually add more density or width to lower frequencies. Because I said like there's not a lot of stuff on the sides there, it's actually bringing up a lot of the ambient energy. And this can be used on all kinds of stuff, on keyboards, especially on things like rooms and stuff like that. It's really powerful, especially with that low end boost, because you can really bring out some size and power, in particular for things like drums. You could pretty much use this on anything. I think, you know, technically I'm showing it here just like on drums. You could use it on full mix, use it on vocals, use it on individual elements. This is something you can experiment with or play around with. And there's a 14-day free trial that you can do, that you can run, and it's worth experimenting on your own. Just to have, now you have a basic idea of how it works. Play around with different elements of a mix. you kind of put it on different things and see how much it helps or doesn't. But two very cool tools, and I thought they were worth a quick review. And there you have it. Extracted from the Fusion hardware device made by Solid State Logic. This is the vintage drive and the stereo image plugin. And they are the plugins of the week.